I disagree with a lot of Catholicism, but they had the vibes correct. Hello friends! It's been about 2 weeks since chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune came out, and oh my goodness, I'm pretty happy with them. This will be my personal review of the game. I'll do a non-spoiler, low spoiler, and full spoiler version. So I'll put timestamps on the screen so you can skip ahead if you haven't played the game yet, or if you somehow completely avoided spoilers for the last 2 weeks. Good on you. But let's get into it. First things first, this is the first chapter to cost money. The other two were a free demo, and so the question on everybody's mind is it worth the $25? And I would say yes, 100%. Absolutely worth it. I got so much playtime out of these chapters. I think my current save, which is just all 4 of the chapters straight through, is about 20 hours. So these chapters are very lengthy. They are a lot of content, a lot of good content, and a lot of fun. Very good time. It was stated in an interview previously that chapters 1 and 2 were shorter as a combined unit than chapters 3 and 4 as a combined unit, so I knew that going in. But I was really happy with the length of these chapters. It felt like a lot of new content after a long wait, and I was super stoked about it. I also felt that the challenge of these chapters was really fair. I think of myself as pretty okay at Deltarune, and I was able to make it through the main story moments without dying, generally. But the secrets is where I found a lot of difficulty and challenge, and I really enjoyed it. It was challenging, and it made me want to tear my hair out, but it was fun. Also, I feel like the rhythm game was really hyped up as being a difficult challenge and something that we were gonna have to fight through, but it's not that bad. I got an almost perfect score my first time doing it. It's not that bad. If you're really nervous about rhythm games, go practice on Lightners Live Plus. You'll be fine. Another thing that kind of makes these chapters worth the money is the production value. There's definitely a spike in just the quality of the way the game looks as compared to chapters 1 and 2, especially chapter 1, which you can notice a lot in some of the animations. There's a lot more animations, and it looks really good. It's just a joy to look at. So last thing I'll say, no spoilers. Is it worth it? 100%. If you have the ability, I would highly recommend playing it as soon as possible. It's so much fun, and it really builds on these characters that we love so much, and really fills out this world that we're in. It is just a good time. For low spoilers, I'm gonna kind of keep it to things that you would know about the game if you've either just started playing or if you didn't bother getting off of social media and blocking all of the things. Just kind of a general overview without getting into the secrety stuff. Chapter 3 picks up right where we left off in chapter 2, which I am so happy about because I remember the change from chapter 1 to chapter 2, and we're just like, oh, we're gonna disregard that. No, we get right into it, and it's awesome. And in the first 5 or so minutes, we meet one of my new favorite characters of all time, Tenna, who I thought was gonna be a woman. Not a bad thing, I just thought it was gonna be a girl. But Tenna's introduction cutscene has to be my favorite thing in the world. I cannot tell you why, but I just started kind of crying when it started playing. I don't know if it was just the anticipation of these chapters had been going on for so long and I was so excited to be finally playing them, or it was just the aesthetic. It was so nostalgic. I have a CRTV that has a little VHS player built in, so I was like, I know exactly what this is. But something about it just got me, man. Speaking of crying, these chapters are so emotionally charged. There are a lot of heavy-hitting moments that kind of get you out of nowhere. People say that's all in chapter 4, but I found a lot of those moments in chapter 3 too. I think I cried more playing chapter 3 than I played chapter 4, but that might be my bad because by the time I got to chapter 4, I might have been a little Deltaruned out, which is unfortunate because chapter 4 is also wonderful. But I have to say, I do kind of think that I prefer chapter 3. The world it's in is so much fun, the characters are so much fun. I have always loved Rules Card, and we get some fabulous rules card moment. But every tier list I see, chapter 3 is at the bottom, and that's a bummer because it's a fun time. There have been complaints about the gameplay being too repetitive and not having replayability, but how I experienced chapter 3 was I I played it through and I almost had a high enough score to get the secret thing, but not quite. And so I just finished up the chapter to see what was going on. And then I started a second save to go back and see if I could get the secrety thing, and I did. And then got to the end of the chapter and couldn't do that secrety thing. So I decided to just go back to my original save, delete what I had done first, and replay the chapter again. And I did not find myself like bored or like, oh, this again for a lot of it. I just love it. I just love the world. I love the characters. It is such a fun time. The music of chapter 3 is just stellar. So much fun, so bouncy, so fun. And I feel like every time I went through it, I found something new. I really love the rhythm game. I love rhythm games, and so that was fun. But I just loved all the mini games. Even I've seen a lot of people complaining about the Zelda style. I thought it was fun, and I found new things just about every time I did it. I really enjoyed it. When it comes to chapter 4, so I did my first 2 playthroughs on the same day, on the Deltarune Today day. I decided I would take the night, let chapter 3 sink in, and then get to chapter 4 the next day. And so on Deltarune yesterday, I decided to start playing chapter 4. And I was not ready for the insane tonal shift. The way that I think of it is that the first 3 chapters are all some sort of game. There's board games, and then there's computer games, and then there's game show, and then it's like chapter 4 is like Catholic guilt. It is the switch up of the century, and I think it was necessary. I think that we were just getting a little comfortable in our silliness of the game, and there is a huge prophecy backstory that we have not really been exposed to all that much, and just the gravity of the situation didn't really hit until chapter 4. And I think that's something that Susie points out. It's just like, okay, this was fun, now things are going wrong really fast. I do think I took on chapter 4 a little wrong. I think I expected to like it as much as I liked chapter 3, especially because I had played chapter 3 and I kept seeing people saying that like, oh, chapter 4 is the better one of the 2, chapter 4 is so good, and I was so excited, and I think I just had my expectations too high because I liked chapter 3 too much. I still did really enjoy chapter 4. There are some stellar character moments, and just the circumstances that these people are in, it's absolutely just heartbreaking when you think about it a little too hard. And it's not all serious. There are some fun, silly moments throughout that like remind you that games are supposed to be fun. But there's just some really awesome character, serious moments and just gravity that we haven't felt before. Chapters 3 and 4 were both particularly a standout chapter for Susie, who I've liked Susie, but I didn't quite click with her until these new chapters came out, and now we're ride or die. Also some great Rouse moments. I love Rouse so incredibly dearly, and I do not hate his hatless design anymore. I think Toby Fox had said before the chapters come out that chapter 4 was the most RPG-like in terms of cutscenes, and I can confirm. And I can also say that I'm really happy with that. These cutscenes look amazing. They're amazing character moments, and they're heartbreaking a lot of the time. And of course, the pixel animations are just beautiful. They are stunning. There's this one moment that I won't show yet of the end of the chapter that just absolutely had my jaw on the floor. It's a beautiful, beautiful looking world, and just the aesthetic. I disagree with a lot of Catholicism, but they had the vibes correct. And the chapter is just beautiful. The enemy design and the world design and the music. The music is just stunning. It's beautiful. The sanctuary themes are gorgeous, so textured and layered. There's this really funky time signature going on, so you can never quite expect what's happening. And it's just so emotionally charged. Very, very well done soundtrack. All I can say is, if you haven't played it, go do it. It's so much fun, and I highly recommend going into it mostly blind. I did know a couple things about chapter 4 because I waited a full night, and I would recommend taking a break between the chapters because of that tonal shift. It just makes it a little bit easier to not be in the silly, goofy mood of chapter 3 to start chapter 4. If you haven't played it, go do it. And then come back, because I'm gonna spoil everything. Full spoiler warning from this point out. Nothing is safe. Okay. Deltarune tomorrow! We'll get into the ending of chapter 4 later. I'm gonna loop back to chapter 3. When I first booted up the game after buying the new chapters and letting them download, I remember sitting on the chapter select menu for like a solid 10 minutes. Just kind of like paralyzed a little bit. I think I was afraid of what was coming. And I just been counting down the days to this day for so very long. I was like, oh no, what if I play these chapters and then everyone I have ever loved is dead by the end? Happy to say, not the case. But I cannot say that I've ever been more excited to get into a game as I was booting up chapter 3. This frickin' guy, Aunt Tenna, Anthony. Be so for real. Why are you 3D? I didn't know that was allowed. It almost looks like fake, like one of those like fan-made Tenna fights that I've seen online. It's done in kind of the Donkey Kong Country SNES style, and it's so weird to look at. It took a while for me to get used to, but once I was used to it, I was so happy every time I saw him. I remember walking down that first hallway, and to see him doing his little dance on one side, I was hooked. I was like, okay, I love this guy. I was not ready for Spamton to be so prevalent in these chapters. My first playthrough, I missed the cutscene where you can actually find Spamton, but I remember I kept hearing about this mailman. I'm like, is he talking about Spamton? I remember like in chapter 1, we had very little mention of Jevil, and then there was practically no mention of Jevil throughout chapter 2, so I thought that the secret bosses were kind of just contained to their own little world, but there's a lot of Spamton in chapter 3, just kind of haunting the narrative, as they say, which was really a welcome surprise, because I think that Spamton's a character that I don't want to go to waste. He has so much potential, he's so interesting, and I've gone back to look at chapter 2 at some of Spamton's dialogue, and the amount of allusions that he makes forward to Tenna is crazy. And of course, Tenna keeps mentioning this Mike guy that we heard Spamton talk about in chapter 2 as one of the only people that he still has compassion for. We don't get to see the real Mike, which is a bummer because I am very curious about this guy. I very much so relate to that one green Pippin with his conspiracy board. I love just like the showbiz kind of aesthetic that chapter 3 has throughout the whole time. I love that when you walk down a hallway, people start cheering for you when you're doing nothing, and I love the terrible 90s game show aesthetic. It is so good. I really like the character moment where you're picking your name, and if you also pick a naughty word, Susie is so stoked to see that you had the same idea as her. I think that's a really sweet moment. These mini games, the boards, are very, very controversial, I have found, which I don't know, I thought they were cool. And I do kind of see where people are coming from, because I do kind of struggle with that style of game. I've tried to play the original Zelda, and I just can't keep track of where I am in those, like, when the screen moves all weird, I just can't quite comprehend my surroundings, as like I don't have a sense of where I am. So that part is confusing, but the boards aren't big enough for me to like get really lost. They're quite small, quite contained, which I think is a good thing, and that kind of serves the style. It was also just a treat to see like the squashed 8-bit versions of these characters. They look so darn cute, and I loved the moment where Susie switches the controller. I put a bow on her every single time, of course I did. She's supposed to wear the ribbons. But I thought that was just such a fun moment, and I did find myself kind of like Rouse in that moment, like, hey, this is not allowed. But it was really nice that if you don't tell Susie to switch the controllers back right away, to have this kind of character moment where Rouse gets to be the leader. And this kind of starts Rouse's autonomy arc, which I did not expect, but holy crap, is it well done. Throughout the game, Rouse has so blindly followed Chris just because that's what he thinks that he's expected to do by the prophecy. Like, we even see this as early as chapter 1, where Rousey's like, hey, what if we don't fight people? But if you tell Rousey to fight, then he will fight for you, which kind of just shows that he really has no agency over himself. But as we go through chapters 3 and 4, we kind of see him starting to grow into his own person and think, what do I want? And also his guilt over those feelings. It's just very enjoyable to watch. Not that I enjoyed seeing Rousey in pain, but that character moment is just so layered, stellar. Very, very good. I also really enjoyed the secret boss side quest because everything was so fun and so bright, and then it's so dingy and gross in kind of the underbelly of it. It's just a really stellar dynamic. I really enjoyed it. Ram is such an interesting character. Why are you British? And essentially they are a power socket that came to life because Chris played with it. How do you play with a power socket? But just this kind of bias towards Chris and just care that Ram had was so interesting, and it felt so shady, which I really enjoy that that's something that the first 3 secret bosses all had in common, was that you kind of feel like you shouldn't be there. But I missed the S rank on the first round, my first time going through. So I missed the first time that I was supposed to be able to play the game, and then by the second round, which had the rhythm game, which I was good at, I got an S rank and I was able to play it, and then it told me I was missing something, and I was so upset. Not upset, but I was like, I'll have to do this again, which is a bummer. And I do think that is a valid complaint. I think you should be able to go back either through getting an S rank on the mini games after each round. I think that should be able to open up the door for you, because it is kind of stinky to have that stuck behind a points paywall, which if you aren't at an S rank, then you probably don't have the points for it. I do think that is an unfortunate barrier and maybe an oversight. So I do think that those complaints about Chapter 3 are incredibly valid, because that's frustrating. But when it comes to the game themselves, I loved going back through these boards, but on your own. And this is one of my favorite things that Toby Fox does, but when you clear all the enemies out of an area, there's no music and it's just like ambient sound. So impactful every single time. And I've never done Snowgrave or Genocide routes, and it put a pit in my stomach. I was like, oh, I'm doing something bad. And the way that it parallels Snowgrave is so interesting to me. And the general consensus that I've seen about this is that new players of Deltarune, after the game is done and once the community has died down, new players, people just picking it up for the first time, will not think to go Snowgrave. They won't have to sit on a smaller amount of content for many years at a time. They can play the whole thing through in one day if they so choose. And so they probably won't think of the Snowgrave route. And so Chapter 3's minigame will introduce it to them, encouraging them to go back and try it out, which I think is really interesting and very well done. And I hope that someone in the future does have that experience, because that's really cool to be like, oh wait, there was this secret thing that I didn't know about the whole time. Also, the boss at the end of the Zelda style minigames is hard in a good way. Like, I felt challenged properly by it. And I've beat him twice now, because I beat it on my second playthrough and on my third playthrough to get the Shadow Mantle. Very well done. A proper challenge. I was frustrated, but in a good way, and didn't take me too long or too many attempts, but like enough for me to be like, yeah, that was hard. Back in the main game, Tenna's worldview dissolving or crumbling apart, everything going wrong for him is so interesting. I really enjoyed not watching Tenna suffer, but seeing what's actually going on with him, because there's this showmanship persona that he puts on and that I love and adore. But kind of seeing that break down and him revealing that he kind of watched Chris's parents divorce and how Chris probably came to Tenna for comfort in terms of like cartoons and such during this difficult time. It's such an interesting dynamic. I really enjoy how the Darkners care for the Lightners, as in like Queen caring for Noelle and now Tenna kind of caring for Chris, but also taking a very big step back because Tenna just doesn't get them anymore. I think that's a very interesting dynamic, and I really enjoyed seeing that. Also, when everything does finally break down and we're in this big chase scene, it is so much fun. Like the stealth sections and everything with running through the curtains of the cowboy game. I struggled with the controls a lot of the cowboy game, but I do really enjoy just cowboys. So I had a very good time. Also, this water cooler, what the heck? It did in fact kick my butt just about every single time I fought one. But I really enjoyed this whole wacky chase scene that culminates in this final boss fight with Tenna, which I also really loved. It was so much fun. I love kind of the WarioWare style mini games, and there was actually, I missed it on my first time through, but there's a mini game that you can unlock where you can play as Susie Zilla, which if you haven't unlocked it, it's not in the final boss fight, but if you have, then it is. So each time playing the final boss fight was different for me, which was awesome. I thought it was a good challenge. It didn't take me down, but I was worried that it was going to. So I thought it was a good level of difficulty for the point of the game that we were at that point. What was difficult came right after when we are hit with the wildest reveal of the Roaring Night. I did not expect that we would see anything of the night until like chapter 6, and there it is at the end of chapter 3 trying to kidnap our mom, which is not great. It is a difficult fight, for me at least. I've seen other people say that they struggled with it too, so I don't feel that bad, but I've had other people say that they thought it was easy. I did not think it was easy. It's really interesting to me that you have to fight the knight, and if you like use Susie to act, like she will just refuse after the first time. She's like, oh, that didn't work. Let me use my axe. Very cool atmospherical fight. The music is great, the surroundings are scary, the knight is intimidating, it looks stellar, and you feel the pressure of the situation. Also, yeah, Tenna died right beforehand, so duh, the stakes are high, oh my gosh. But of course, on my first playthrough, I didn't have the Shadow Mantle or anything, so it just sent me straight to chapter 4. We get the Undyne reveal, which was awesome. So good to see her. Hope she's doing okay. Homegirl is stuck. Then of course, on my other playthroughs, I didn't get it spoiled for me that you could beat the knight, and so I had the Shadow Mantle, and I thought that that was the shadow crystal of the chapter, and then I of course die to the knight, and I get the Gaster text, and I'm like, hold on. And I remember I didn't have the Shadow Mantle equipped because I didn't know it was wearable, and I actually got this custom text that was like, you're missing something, you can't win like this, better check your armor. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks Gaster. That was just the coolest reveal of like, you could do it if you really tried, and it made me so stubborn about it that of course I was determined to take the knight down. It took me a good couple hours, I gotta be honest. It's a difficult fight. It repeatedly kicked my butt so close to the end. I remember the first time getting the, oh, you were so close message. I was fuming. But I just really enjoyed the difficulty balance of this chapter, how the main storyline is easy with like enough to like make you sweat a little bit with like the water cooler and the Tenna fight, but like you can get through it without getting frustrated, and then all of this optional stuff is like cranked to the max. I really enjoy that style of gameplay. But I did get the Shadow Crystal, which was so gratifying to finally take the knight down. That was awesome. I also really enjoyed that after the knight fight, the bunker finally comes into play, now titled The Shelter, because it's just been so ominous for so long. It was so great to see these things so early on into the game itself. I did not expect anything with the bunker or the knight until very late game, so it was awesome to like get some answers about what the heck those things are. And then of course chapter 4 picks up right after chapter 3, which is so gratifying. I don't think that chapter 3 could have been released without a buddy. It was originally supposed to be 3, 4, 5, and I'm very happy that it stayed 3, 4, because I can also not imagine chapter 4 being the middle chapter. There's so much going on there. So I really enjoyed chapter 3 having a buddy, because it would have been so awful to see that ending cutscene of the door opening to the bunker for Chris and then going black, and then it opens up and we're back in the TV world sealing the fountain. I think that would have been such a bummer to like have a year or so anticipation building up to that. But chapter 4 opens up, and I was so happy to get a light world section, because that was something that I thought was missing from chapter 3, was that we didn't get to explore the light world at all or go check on our castle town, which I was really bummed about because I love Abigail Town. It's my favorite place to be. And I wanted to see all of the new enemies from chapter 2 kind of hanging out there. But I think that's really great about chapter 4 is that we get this really long light world section, because there's of course, you go to church in the morning with Toriel, and then you have some time to explore the town. You can go to your castle town. There's a really sweet scene in the diner with the two of them. You get to interact with Sans, maybe Undertale. And then of course the whole scene in Noelle's house. We get to see Noelle's house. We get to see Noelle's mom. We get some really concrete information about Des. Everything has so far just been like allusions and brief mentions, but we get to see her room. We get to see that she has one of what we can assume to be Asriel's sweaters in her closet. So it's really nice to get some concrete information about this character. And also this house segment had me sweating the first time I played it. Chris do not mess this up for me. And it's such an interesting dynamic that Chris is actively working against us as the soul, to the point that they're beating us with a hockey stick to keep us away from this freaking guitar. And just these ominous messages that they're receiving on their phone, and the fact that once they are free from us, the first thing they go do is make some chocolate milk and play the piano. I'm like, man, I can get you chocolate milk and let you play the piano. Work with me here. But yeah, I just really enjoyed this moment inside Noelle's house. I loved seeing more of Susie and Noelle's dynamic and how it they like each other. I was a little sad to see less of Birdley, but then I was also a little okay to not see more of Birdley. I think that he has served his purpose and will probably come in a lot in chapter 5, but I was okay to have Birdley omitted for a bit there. And the introduction of Noelle's mom was so well done. It was scary. I was shaking in my boots a little bit. Really, really stellar, really well done. I also think it's so interesting that Dreamer and Holiday family dynamic. I am so interested in what their relationships to each other are, because of course Asgore and Rudy kind of had a bit of a falling out after college, and then Toriel hates Carol for some reason, besides the fact that she's scary. Des and Asriel were really close, and then Noelle kind of feels like she and Chris were just kind of close because they were around each other a lot. I am so excited to hear more about this dynamic, which I feel like will come into play a lot in chapter 5, because we do see, I never saw it on my playthrough, but I've seen other people see that Asgore has a shadow crystal for some reason, which we are gonna unpack later. But this whole overworld section, really awesome. I love the new additions to Castletown. I love that I can go back and play the rhythm games. I thought there was just Raise Your Bat and then you could replay the boss fights from the previous chapters, but it is rhythm game versions of their themes, which is awesome because I love rhythm games, but I was getting a little bored of just the one song. So I was really stoked to find that out. And then Sham's reaction to you having successfully taken down the knight made that fight so worth it. It was awesome. He's like, oh, cool. Really awesome to see. And then I loved that this was a church dark world. It just, the vibes of the whole environment were so good. And I loved getting to meet Gerson in this world. I did not think that was gonna happen. I thought he was just gonna be dead. And it was so interesting to see the implications that dead monsters can kind of live on through their objects, and then that object can be turned into a darkner and hold their memory. That's a lot. That might come into play later, and that will be heartbreaking, but a very welcome surprise. I can imagine people that haven't played Undertale playing this and not quite getting the reveal until we find the hammer in the pastor's desk, and it's like, oh, this guy's dad. Of course, it was maybe a little less powerful for me because I knew who Gerson was and I knew that he was dead, and I knew that this guy was that guy that's dead, but I can imagine that being a really awesome reveal for someone who doesn't know that. And he's just an enjoyable character. I love how Susie warms up to him, and her dynamic with him is just so fun to watch. They really care about each other, and he's being a little stinker. I'm old! Very enjoyable. I also really enjoyed one of the first mini bosses that we get in this chapter. In Jackenstein, I was so frustrated. This is the only main story fight that took me down on my first playthrough because I didn't restock after the Tenna fight on my items, and I was simultaneously so frustrated and just laughing my ass off at how funny this guy is. I couldn't take him seriously just because of the way he types. It was just so silly, and because he types so silly, I gave him a silly voice in my head, and then it was supposed to be like intimidating, but then the "you're taking too long" hilarious. I was so mad, and I was having such a good time throughout this entire fight. And to get the Spook tune to come back, I really liked all of the kind of allusions to Undertale in the music of chapter 4. I will say I didn't feel like the Dark World of chapter 4 was as fleshed out as previous Dark Worlds, which I think is understandable because there's such a long Light World section beforehand. I expected it. Honestly, the Dark World was a lot longer than I expected it to be, especially on my first playthrough when I was discovering things all brand new for myself. I was very happy with the length of both of these chapters. These chapters are beefy. I think my current save, the most of time that I'd spent in terms of hours was on chapter 4. I think it's about 6 hours. These chapters are very, very worth the money. There weren't as many like enemy types in the chapter 4 Dark World, but again, it was just kind of expected. It would be a little shorter, but still a decent length, still like a full Dark World, but probably the shortest of the Dark Worlds that we've encountered. And all of this to say, I haven't played through the weird route, so there's like a whole other layer of this game that I'm missing out on, and I still think it's worth the $25. Keep that in mind. Really enjoyed the music. It was all very just interesting the way it was layered together. Very interesting sound. I loved the integration of the kind of choral synth funkiness. Very good. Very well done. I can see these being regarded as like the best Deltarune songs in the future. I also loved that Gerson was the secret boss, and I loved how different these secret bosses. They weren't just some hard boss fight. It was different fighting styles. Chapter 3 with the whole mini game to get the mantle before a big secret fight, and then Chapter 4 being you only have Susie. We're bringing back Undyne's battle strategy from Undertale and her theme song, which I guess would technically be Gerson's theme song that she took on from him, which is really awesome in hindsight. I loved seeing the shield mechanic come back. I did not figure out these freaking turtle shells at all. They kicked my butt every single time. It took me quite a few tries on my first time around. I don't know if I just had better armor the second time. Oh, wait. I had Susie wearing the shadow mantle from the night fight, and then I didn't take it off of her. So she had way better armor on my second playthrough of Chapter 4, which is why I made it through the Gerson fight first try. That makes so much sense. Getting that shadow crystal was really awesome. I love the reveal that like he was like supposed to be tempted by the shadow crystal and then just like didn't because he's that guy. I also loved these climbing sections throughout Chapter 4. Some of them are really frustrating, but in general, they were so fun. I loved having a new way to move, and I loved seeing this climbing sections before I got the claws and then getting to go back and re-explore these areas with a new way to get around. That was so cool. I also loved when it's on like a circular pillar and that kind of 3D effect. I thought that was really well done, and it didn't make me motion sick, which was awesome. I loved the combination of 2D and 3D in these chapters. I thought it was really well done. And I remember playing through this chapter, and there was still so much that I had expected to happen. Like there's gonna be a big fight, and there's the whole scene in the trailer where Susie and Chris are kind of colored differently. And I remember getting kind of towards the end of, or what I thought was the end of Chapter 4, and I was like, holy crap, there's still so much that needs to happen. And I really hope that this dynamic of incorrectly made Dark Worlds comes back, because I really enjoyed seeing this different kind of color scheme and just how things were kind of like a parallel universe of what we had gone through before. I hope that that's a gameplay mechanic that comes back, that we can flip through alternate versions of Dark Worlds. I think that'd be really cool. But the whole Susie's Dark World segment was so cool, so interesting. And of course, these character moments that we get with Susie thinking that she's fighting the old man and then actually not really. And then I can't remember where it is, but this moment where Susie and Rousey are arguing in front of this stained glass window. So incredibly heartbreaking, absolutely made me cry. And you can really kind of feel Susie's frustration, because she even has a line in Chapter 3 where she says, I hate it when people don't tell me the full story, and she's just been constantly getting corrected by Rousey throughout Chapter 4. And so you can feel that frustration, and like it's bubbling up for good reason, but also stop yelling at him. I love arguments where you can fully see both sides of the situation. I hate it when one argument is obviously stacked to be like the correct one. Like you could make a case for both of them in that moment. And they make up, and Rousey promises to tell the full story more, and he does make a lot of improvements and does try to tell them everything that he can. But there's just this moment where Susie is going to find out what's the end of the prophecy, and just Rousey's fear and dread of that moment is so interesting, and it makes me so curious about what the heck is at the end of the prophecy. I am so scared about what is going to happen at the end of this game. Someone's going to die. And of course, this culminates in the moment after the final fight, where Susie runs off to go find the old man after he comes in during the fight, and then Rousey starts chasing after her, like, wait, don't go ahead, you're gonna see the end. And she does see the end, and she ends up shattering the pane of glass that it's on, and we get this really sweet moment between Susie and Rousey, and then this really sweet moment between Chris and Rousey, which really solidifies that Chris doesn't hate Rousey, which is really awesome to see, and kind of something that I've been worried about in the past couple chapters, was that like, do you even like hanging out with this guy? And I'm making you hang out with this guy because I like this guy. But really awesome to see Rousey hug Chris of their own volition. And this moment is also just heartbreaking to see Rousey literally with Susie's blood on him. Just interesting foreshadowing that I hope is not how it ends up working out. But backtracking a bit, that final fight is so cool, but it also makes me worried about where we can go from here. Like, we fought the knight and made it out alive. Didn't win, but we made it out. And then successfully beating a titan, which I also did not think was gonna come until way later. It's like, where are we gonna go from here? I'm scared. I can't imagine how the stakes can get much higher than they did in chapter 4. And I do think that chapter 4 will be like a small peak, and then chapter 5 will kind of maybe lower a bit, so then we can really shoot up for the ending. But I'm nervous about these things. But this fight was so cool. The animation of the titan's hand breaking out of its shell was so incredibly well done. It looks so very good. This is some of the animation that I was talking about really enjoying earlier. Just awesome. And the fight was so cool. The Dreckenstein fight frustrated me, but it really got you used to the idea of your soul emitting light and getting close to the enemy to be able to beat it, and the different method for gaining tension points. I thought that was all very well done and eased you into the style of fighting before going full force on like an actual difficult fight. This fight was so cool, and then just the heart-sinking moment when the Titan starts regenerating and you can't do anything about it, and Rousey's like, well, guess we just have to do this over and over again to keep the Titan contained. And it's like, well, okay, I'm out of all of my items, so we'll see how that goes. And then Gerson comes in and kind of reinvigorates the team. It's a really, really awesome, really powerful moment. Gosh, speaking of awesome, really powerful moments, the moment where they're walking towards the knight and each of the fun gang takes a moment to take the brunt of the force. So ow, that is just beautiful, and it just shows that they do really care for each other. I did think it was interesting that both Susie and Rousey help Chris up when they get hurt, but then Chris doesn't help either of them up. Interesting. Very interesting. But it was really nice to see the fun gang having friendship moments without the players' involvement. I think that was really something that was reassuring to me. I remember playing chapter 4 and beating the Titan and seeing the moment with the prophecy and comforting Rousey, and then coming back to the light world, and you just feel so empty, and the town is totally empty. It's dark, it just rained, and then the first couple chords of It's Raining Somewhere come in a track literally called The Place Where It Rained. That is just heartbreaking, and it's so heavy on your soul. You don't realize how heavy everything that just happened is until that moment where you're left to sit with it. You can sit by the lake with Susie, but that's pretty much all you can do. And Susie asked to spend the night at your house again. I had gotten this scene spoiled for me, and I was like, oh my gosh, finally Sans and Toriel getting together. Oh my gosh, this is stuff of my dreams. And I remember getting to that point in game, and I was so mad. I was so upset, because we had gone on this whole Dark World hunt for Toriel, and there she is in her house, intoxicated, with this guy that's been kind of mean to me, but like I let it pass because haha, Sans Undertale funny. And I just remember being so mad. I was so frustrated. I was like, I'm gonna kill this guy. And the fact that Susie wants to go home after seeing that is just really heartbreaking. She's come to know in the past couple days our house as a safe place, and then to immediately want to leave because of the scene that's happening. And it's not that Toriel's being a bad parent because she's letting loose for a night and having fun, but it's just the circumstances. Everybody is very valid in their emotions in this scene, I will say. And then just the ending of Chris trying so hard to sleep, and then hearing Susie outside their window having doubts that she can actually prevent the ending of the prophecy, and then Chris trying to go with her until they get a call on their phone from who we can assume is the Knight or affiliated with the Knight, and saying, hey, you promised, we're a team. I can really feel the dilemma that Chris is having between the promise that they made and now, okay, I'm actually really enjoying these people and spending time with them, and now I'm feeling very conflicted. Very interesting conundrum. And I loved all of the piano moments in chapter 4. I loved these little cup guys, and I love how much they'll defend their miladies. I loved the stained glass windows. I loved how the prophecy looked. I loved it. Just a very powerful chapter. Very story heavy, very enjoyable, good stuff. I can't say that I want to rank the chapters. I think that they all have their own great things about them. It's kind of hard to do it objectively versus subjectively, especially when chapter 1 was very obviously made on less of a budget than chapters 3 and 4 were. I don't think it's fair to compare them because the bones of them are all the same quality. I think it's just the environments, and honestly the budget has a lot to do with it, the look of it. I don't think it's fair to rank them. I enjoy them all. I enjoyed this whole game. I am really excited to play chapters 1 through 4 consecutively because I've just been going back to chapter 3 and playing 3 and 4 together, but I would love to just get a feel for the whole game as we have it right now and hopefully pick up some more Tenna references from Spamton. Really excited for that. And kind of just see what foreshadowing I've missed. If you're still watching, you've probably played the game. At least I hope so, because it's really great to go in blind. But even if you're not going in blind, I would still really recommend it. The gameplay is really fun. It's very varied. There's a lot of new, there's puzzles, there's mini games, there's different gameplay styles. The fights are really fun, really challenging in a good way. Very much enjoyed it. In the end, 100% worth the $25. Highly recommend this game. And I cannot wait for chapter 5 in 2026. My bet for chapter 5 in terms of timeline, a lot of people are saying probably December as like a holiday release, December holiday. But I think fall, just because there's this whole fall festival that's kind of going on. I think this will be a really nice fall game when it's all completed because it's so autumnal in tone. I can't wait to play the whole game when it comes out, just all the way through over again. I think it's going to be so powerful, especially just like going back to chapter 1, knowing what we know now. I think it's just going to be a real treat. Thank you for watching. Go play the game if you haven't for some reason. Go play Lightners Live Plus. If you need a little recap on chapters 1 and 2, I do have a video doing that I posted about 2 weeks ago. And I hope you have a great day. Bye! Or Rousey's like, hey, what if we don't fight people, but if you tell Rousey to fight... Oh, I had my finger on the mic. But if you tell Rousey to fight...